said that all good things come in time, and this is sure one of those times. This is Jill Langham, and if you don't know Jill Langham, you're one of maybe two people on the planet of the earth that don't. And Jill is a personal fitness trainer, and we work together at World Gym Palm Springs, and I'm so happy. This has been 5 years in the making, this sit down and talk with our wonderful Jill Langham. She's the fitness and fashion guru of diva of Palm Springs, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to her here and to get to know her a little bit better. How are you, Jill?
I'm great, Ted. Thank you so much for the 5-year wait. It was well worth it. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I feel the same way, and everything happens for a reason, right?
I agree.
You know, I want people to know you on a different level, because we see you out and about in the Palm Springs social scene and at the gym, and you know, you've got a big following here. People adore you and love you, but there's a lot to you, isn't there? Besides just fabulous fitness and fashion and beauty and all that.
Well, you're very kind. I do have a quite rich life. I think everyone does have their own story, and mine certainly has lots of twists and turns, but I'm grateful that those twists and turns led me here to Palm Springs and to the life that I have now, which I could not be a happier or more rich person from who I know and how the community has accepted me.
Well, they sure have, and they've embraced you fully. I mean, I see everywhere you go, people know Jill Langham, and I'm glad to know Jill Langham. You know, I went over your bio that you gave me, and I've read it several times, and I have to say, you've survived a lot in your life that's made you stronger, but you also learned how to live in the midst of survival. I think we get lots of points for being a survivor, and it looks good, but you learned how to live, and especially in this last 5 years or so, I think.
Yes.
Your bio is incredible, and you're so transparent. Where does that come from, that willingness and that openness to be so transparent? It's wonderful.
Thank you. I guess I'd have to say from my parents, even though we actually weren't close, but somehow the lessons that they needed to teach me really got taught. They were wonderful human beings, they were wonderful friends to their friends, but they actually were really not so good as parents. They tried so hard to get it right that they never were actually themselves. And I think that by seeing people not be themselves made me want to be as much of my authentic self that I could be.
Right. And that shines beautifully with you. I think everybody knows that Jill Langham belongs here with us in Palm Springs, that's for sure.
This is my home.
How'd you get here originally?
Strange to say, the first trip I took here I was actually 6 years old, but I have no memory of it. We had gone to Disneyland and Knott's Berry's Farm, and a 6-year-old would of course only remember those.
I don't blame you.
11 years ago, my husband Steve and I were now divorced, but we came here for our first white party. From some gay friends told me, if you like dancing on the Atlantis cruises, you will not believe what happens on a white party weekend. So we came and enjoying ourselves immensely, went to every activity, kind of like you are in summer camp, like you think you're going, you have to go to everything.
Right.
Well, by Saturday night, I was in the midst of really the highest high I'd ever known on this earth, having a really great time, and it was in the middle of white party. I know this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but I heard the words, "Move to Palm Springs and train gay men," in the middle of 2 o'clock in the morning white party, surrounded by 10,000 shirtless, beautiful men, and my husband. We're like the only married couple in Sweden, one of the only women that was there.
I'm sure.
And I heard it twice, Ted. And as all I know is it was a calling. I'm saying it's from God. People can say what they like, but 1 year later, Steve wasn't really against it, but he didn't understand why we were moving.
Certainly.
But we moved, and that's how I came here, and I came to be this person.
Yeah, no mistakes. I've seen pictures of you pre-Palm Springs and in your past life, and what a transformation. When do you recall making this major transformation in your life?
Well, I really do credit it to Steve, who is my very best friend. We are, as I said, divorced, but we have a lovely relationship. 16 years ago when I met him, he had been watching me at the gym. A quick aside, Steve had been married at the time. His wife got killed on the back of his motorcycle. And 3 months later, we talked about getting together to have a meal, and out of that meal, we started a 12-year relationship. And he taught me, he said, "I see you at the gym." He said, "You're the hardest working person there." He said, "Do you like the results you have?" And I'm like, oh God, who is this guy? Because I didn't like the results I had, but I also thought I was doing everything I good.
Certainly.
And long story short, he put me on an eating regime. Had me start doing less cardio than I was ever doing, doing more like sitting on the stationary bike and lifting the heaviest weights I'd ever lifted, which still were not that heavy, but they were heavier than what I had been doing. And much to my entire chagrin and just shock, I went from the Jill that I've been walking around life in to 5 months later getting on stage in Albuquerque, New Mexico and winning my first competition. Won 3rd place, 3 first place. I took the whole show and got my picture in Flex magazine. And when I tell you the most surprised person in the entire audience was me, I'm not being gracious. I'm telling you the truth.
No, yeah, it's a stunning transformation. I've looked at some of those articles and pictures of you, and it's like none other. And it's a wonderful thing to see because you seem to be happy in it and found your place and just blossomed, it shows. So, because you were a nurse for 20 years before.
I was
this,
I was a psychiatric nurse. Actually, chemical dependence was my specialty, and pregnant drug addicts was the field that I focused on. And I loved my work until the way that I describe it is that the insurance business became more important than the medical business, and it was about getting money from people and not helping them. And I realized that I was tired of taking care of ill people. I'd rather teach them how not to get sick, how to be healthy. So I quit nursing about 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, 20 years ago. Okay, you've packed a lot into this. So I have to ask the big question here. For all of those who always wonder and always get it wrong, how old are you?
I am 61 years old.
61 years old. So no one ever gets that right. So what do you attribute? Is it your lifestyle since the transformation, or did you always live a fairly healthy lifestyle?
No. I was anorexic and bulimic growing up from the age of 7. So I had been very abusive to the lower half of my body. Also had not known until I was about 37 that I had been sexually abused as a child. And I was repressing so much my body image, and I really look closely at the way that people carry fat. Are they hiding something in certain areas? And at least it was true for me. And I certainly was aware of food, and when I went to nursing school, this is back in the day, we actually had 1 hour of nutrition 5 days a week for 3 years. Most nutritionists do not have that much nutrition education, so I was the apple has this much of carbohydrate. I was just, spewing out all this list of numbers and paying attention, and was always focusing on exercise, but I never knew that I needed to be eating, not dieting. And as we've all been told, DIE are the first 3 letters of diet, and that's what it does.
Yes, it does. You're right. So, you are very popular. How do I put this? You obviously, men adore you. Gay men in particular here in Palm Springs. You can't get away from that. So, would you describe yourself as a man's woman or a woman's woman, or somewhere in between?
Well, my mom used to call me a tomboy right from the start. So and my mother said, Jill, I don't know what it is about you. She said, but you love the boys and the boys love you. This is when I was a little girl. So there is some unusual energies. As I said, my mom was a really amazing human being, but she really did not know how to foster the feminine side. She was a very masculine woman. I have that propensity and tendency. So I truly love men, which is what we all have in common.
That's what we do.
Of course, at the end of the night, I'm like going home alone, guys. What can I say?
Wait, come on, step up, you guys. Yes, we need to help our Jill out. So listen, in that regard, I've seen you train women, and they're very comfortable with you. My take on you, I'm going to inflict my opinion, is that you're a great combination of both. Some women can be intimidated by all this, but I think once they get to know you and know how connected you are with the woman's experience, I mean, gosh, you talk about your experience with menopause and everything, and you're very sensitive to women's needs. I think that's an incredible thing. Do you like to hang out with your women too?
I do. I really. It's sad, growing up, I only really had male friends. The women thing, I never understood what it was about, and since I didn't look like this person growing up, maybe women saw this person when they looked at me, even though I wasn't in this form. But I think they ended up being intimidated by me, and I couldn't even understand that. I feel like I'm the most open, nicest, wanting to be human being, where we all have our dark side. But lately, the respect that I've been getting from women has just been brilliant, and I'm so grateful for it because it's been a long time coming.
I'm glad.
And I so appreciate the way that you phrased that. I have so much experience about the body through menopause.
You do.
That I do want to show women that the body that you have may not be the body that you are really meant to have, but because your hormones are so messed up right now, your body is really becoming your enemy. And that actually happened to me, Ted. I don't know if you know this, but after I competed for 4 years and was winning all my competitions, overnight I put on 10% body fat from 15 to 25%.
Big deal.
And on me, that was like 2 clothing sizes
Certainly.
in all the wrong spots. Was doing the same program Steve had put me on, but my body became my enemy. And I kind of look at it that whoever your higher power might be, God kind of said, we're going to put this on this girl because she's going to get to the bottom of it and she's going to be our spokeswoman. And that's really who I feel I am.
You are. I mean, it's evident in your website, Boomer and Bloom, and through your bio. I mean, you have a wealth of information there that you just can't find anywhere else. And I found it interesting as a man going through menopause. You know,
and it's real.
Yeah, it's real. Thank you.
It
So, do you have a preference? Speaking of men and women training, do you have a preference to training men or women? What's your?
You know, it's the person.
Yeah.
For me, it doesn't matter if they're committed. And I tell people, and I'm sure that everything I'm saying is a total reflection of who you are and what you share with your clients. But I remind them, I'm on a journey with you, but this is your journey.
You know, Jill, we are part of a rare but increasing breed of trainers over 50. So, did you ever think that the opportunities for you would be this robust at this age and at this point in our lives?
I'd certainly never thought that, Ted, but the longer that in this last process of really getting to know myself and love myself, I realize I really am a late bloomer.
Right.
And having been at Bianchi before I married Steve and now at Langham, it's like the LB, late bloomer. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. So
Certainly.
I think it somehow worked out. But so yeah, I think it is. We are in a unique position to really be role models of what's possible.
Do you think you have to love this job to really do it well? I see examples of love and not so much love out there. Of course, we all do. But what do you personally think? How you connect with people is such an important part.
Well, this is my passion, so for me, it's absolutely mandatory. And I do love what I do. I love the opportunity to be a guide or a teacher and use myself, as I said earlier, as a role model.
It shows because, with all this wonderfulness that we see and we get to be a part of, you have a quiet grace when you glide across the floor there in the gym with your clients and you're focused. And you gosh knows, I'm a big Budinsky, so I'll come up and start a conversation. You have a quiet grace about you in a way to do that doesn't exclude, it embraces, and you still focused on that client, just focused, and it shows beautifully. So, and I think your clients appreciate that.
We have talked about, I let people know that I do know a lot of people in town, and people have been very generous to always want to say hello to me. And I let my clients know they will have 10 seconds, but my undivided attention is on you for a full 60 minutes. And having been a nurse who punched a time clock,
Certainly.
Time is really critical to me, and every minute does count. So that's my way of being a professional back to my clients.
I've had the opportunity to speak with several of your clients over the years, your current clients and past clients, and not one has ever been, other than sterling, the reviews about you. So that must feel really great to you at this point.
I feel very proud, and I'm so grateful for the response that I get. It makes me feel like I'm on the right path, doing what I'm meant to be doing here in the place that I'm meant to be living. So
right, I think you are too. We're sure glad. Right. Hey, I got another personal question for you. What's a bad day for you?
Well, like most people, Netflix, just keep hitting the button. It would be, I do, when I say isolate, I don't mean in a negative kind of way, but when I'm not really feeling myself, I will not go out. I don't mean that I'll stay away from people, but I feel like when I go out, I'm there to share the very best part of me. So when I'm really aware of those days when hormonally or full moons affect me, Mercury retrograde affects me, I just kind of, pull more back into myself, and, once I get clean with myself, I'm back out on the circuit again, but I do I love my alone time, to be honest with you.
You need that to recharge, huh?
I really do, and
Yeah.
people don't understand, but I go, but when I tell people I need to go now, it's not like in 15 minutes, it's kind of like, I'm out.
Right,
And I go home, and when I lay down, boom, my head hits the pillow, it's over and out. So.
Learning to take care of yourself and doing it beautifully with Jill Langham. I think there's a whole series right there you can teach.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, we've got a bright future here.
Yeah.
Learning to take care of yourself, was that an easy thing to do, and with your background as a nurse and your parental influence or lack thereof? Did you?
Well,
You're a caretaker.
have always been a caretaker, and I was somebody who grew up very quickly. By 10 years old, I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as I said, I had great parents, but there was just some ways in which they actually instilled me to take care of myself, but they thought they were doing something different.
Right.
So I don't want to say it was a hard journey. It's been one that I've been on for a long time. But it was after Steve left when I was cooking 6 meals a day for the two of us, so 12 meals.
Right.
And he left, and I thought, wow, I wonder if I'm going to continue to do this for myself. And that was a really, it's one thing when you know someone's expecting a meal, like, hey, no problem.
Certainly.
But when the person expecting it was me, and I had kind of grown up to be more of a martyr type of person, it was like, oh, that's okay, I don't need to do that for myself.
Right.
So.
Never ask for help. Never take care of others first.
No,
Yeah.
yes,
So we're turning that around.
Yeah, we are.
Good.
Children should be seen and not heard. That goes on.
I have to say, we watched, not just myself, but I think all of Palm Springs watched you change and evolve after your divorce from Steve and as you were going through it. And I've never met two people who are as kind and loving to each other in the midst of emotional grief, we will, and change in your life. And you went full circle. We watched you grieve that. We watched you do what you needed to do and go within, and you traveled. How do you feel about that whole process now and the way you handled it and where you are now because of that?
Well, first of all, thank you for recognizing the way in which we did this, but I must tell you that it was a gay couple that Steve and I met early on when we moved here that was in the process of splitting up, and they were so loving in the way that they did it that I thought to myself, I did not really think it would be me going through it, but I thought if this ever were to happen, that would be the way that I would like to do this. And I realized, if people are being honest, 99.9% of us do not get married because we don't love the person we're marrying. We love the person and we want that to work and we think it's going to be lifelong. But life does happen and our paths change, and I realized if Steve and I, we had gone completely on separate paths, and I thought, let us stop right now when we still love and respect one another, because I do not want to be in a situation where I end up talking bad about someone that I loved the day I married them. So that's all I can say is I'm thankful to those two gentlemen who did what they did back in 2007. It did pave a path for me.
Well, wonderful, and it was beautiful, and it gave us all a great example of how we can be if we choose to. So thank you for that.
That's my pleasure.
Your clients are varied, and I notice your connection with them. What is the most important single piece of advice that you give a client prior to, during, and after they fly the nest, if they ever do? We all have long and short-term clients, but so what's the most important thing that you can say to them that you do?
It's to teach them how to love themselves from the inside out. And it seems like such a simple thing. We've heard it in a million different ways. I never really knew what it looked like. And when Steve and I decided to end our marriage 3 years ago, I realized, wow, I have this really unique opportunity to get to know myself with no one else's impressions, opinions, judgments of me. And because of that process and where it's brought me, and I have really changed quite a bit in the last 3 years, that is what I have begun to realize is the key to this entire thing. Because when one does love themselves, the first thing that I ask them is, can you keep your word to yourself? If you're going to start this program, can you keep your word to yourself? And it's not right or wrong, good or bad, I'm not judging you, but if you said, yes, I'm going to eat 6 times a day every 3 hours, are you going to do that? And only you will ever know the answer. And if you succeed, you're like, wow, I see what happens. But if you're like most of us, we get to that point where we go, oh, it's okay, I'll do it tomorrow, or oh, it doesn't matter, I can get a meal later. And all of a sudden, that slippery slope begins, and I realized that it's that commitment to oneself. It has to start there, or at least for me, it had to start there.
Certainly.
So, and that would be both in the beginning, middle, and of course the final part of the journey, but also that working your body from the inside out, that muscles are not accessories, they're actually something we're pushing out of our body. You know what I mean by pushing out, not to get rid of, but you're growing it from the inside out. It's a garden. It's a garden, and we're bringing it into bloom.
That inside out theory is so evident. I think so many people come to us thinking they want one thing, and they have this whole transformation, and it starts from the inside out. You're a caregiver from the get-go, being a nurse, and now you're a trainer, and I think that is probably, is it one of our biggest jobs and most important jobs is to teach people how to love themselves, and when sometimes we don't even know how to do it ourselves as much as we're great about telling other people, but you seem to know how to do that.
But Ted, trust me when I tell you, it came with a lot of going back to the balance and the focus, and as we've said in so many different ways and forms, body, mind, and spirit, me, myself, and I, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, cardio, weightlifting, and nutrition. It's basically those three-pronged stools that our lives can focus around, and when I began to realize they need to have an equal sign in between all those three sides, and I realized this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about getting ready to do this. I had just had my 61st birthday and totally binged on major cake and saw my body transform in a way. Yeah, oh, listen, I am a human, but it's like, what can I say? But I used the last 30 days to really turn everything around, and happily, as of last night when I went out to Wang's, the guy said, oh my God, you're so fit. And I said, oh, thank you so much, because it was like I could show my clients, I fell off the wagon. 21 days later, I'm back on.
Exactly.
Here I am.
You're human. You're beautifully human that way.
Human.
Yes. And we all need that example. I think as trainers, we can be put up on a pedestal, and sometimes we put ourselves up on a pedestal. So to be real like that is a great example for all of us, because none of us are perfect, right?
Oh my gosh, far from
It's
it.
that journey. So.
But I guess I just want to say one thing about that. I do actually think that unless you were born with a medical condition, that we actually our bodies came to us with perfect functioning parts. And my goal is to let each of those parts go back to functioning perfectly. I myself will never be perfect, but if my body is operating perfectly, then I only know more light comes into me and better things happen. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because I think there's a big difference between perfection and allowing the machine to work perfectly.
I think you're right. I think there's all sorts of stuff in there that we make excuses for ourselves not to honor that. So I have a couple of personal questions here, and then we'll wrap this up. If you weren't a personal trainer, what would you do?
I would be a fashion designer or an architect.
No. Fashion designer or an architect, okay.
They've been my passions for a long time.
I had no idea about the architecture.
My dad was in construction, and so I kind of grew up in a family of blueprints all over the place, and I think I didn't realize I was going to be an architect of the body instead of an architect of a building.
You really are.
And the fashion design, I mean, I think that's kind of a shoot.
Yeah. I mean, I look to you for fashion advice. So, hey, listen, this is a big question, but you most likely have thought about this a lot, about where you're headed. What are your personal goals? Where do you see yourself?
I see myself as wanting to affect more people, be able to give my information to many more people than the one-on-one that I'm doing now, or the dancing that attracts attention, etc. So I would love to be involved in a television show. I've actually written one book completely, and two other books that I haven't quite finished about my life, but I keep growing and changing, and I keep thinking, oh, well, do you do a part one, part two? Like, that seems so grandiose, but so writing is something that's really important to me, and communicating, so I think just on a larger level to be able to do that.
You write so beautifully. I remember reading some of your travel blogs, and when you went through your divorce even, I mean, your eloquence and your your way with words. It's very endearing, and it's real, and it's transparent, and there's no false pretense. That's my critique on you. So I always enjoy looking forward to that. You know, how do people? I mean, you've got your website, Boomer and Bloom. Is that right? boomerandbloom.com?
It is.
Okay. How do people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you, Jill?
Honestly, call or text me.
Okay. What's that phone number?
It is 760-218-1527.
1527.
And they're welcome to text me or to call me directly. And I'm going to sound like the most antiquated person, but as much as I love to use the internet, I'm really not an internet person. I mean, I'm Facebook if someone puts a photo up with me, or I'm traveling.
Certainly.
But so I don't look to people finding out about me. I think what they see in person is how they understand more about me. But when I've had the opportunity to write, I've been so appreciative to share more.
Great. Well, I would encourage people to get a hold of you. Your training techniques are one that I admire and respect, and I see the rapport and the sensitivity you have with your clients, and it makes me a better trainer to follow in your footsteps
Well,
as well.
I think there's a lot of mirroring going on here, because I can say the same thing about you, honestly.
Thank you so much. So, listen, this has been a wonderful day for me to get to sit and have this intimate conversation with Jill. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. It's nice to get another glimpse of our diva, our fitness and fashion diva here in Palm Springs, a little more human side. So Jill, thank you so much for being a part of this today. I've been waiting, and this was the cherry on my sundae today. So
You're so sweet. Thank you very much for the opportunity.